Hey friends, I'm excited about today's episode because I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, stepping into destiny. And I do hope you found these lessons on stress helpful. Don't forget that you can find all of them in the free Eating Stress course, and they're in video format along with the downloadable transcript and the action steps, which are only found in that place in the course. So you can go to teresashieldsparker.com/stress and get immediate access. You know, God has a destiny plan for each of our lives. We might not have a clue what it is, or we may have an inkling, or we may be smack dab in the middle of our destiny. In either case, He's working on your plan even right now. And part of the plan is for your very bones to vibrate with life. And I'm looking forward to that. He's even given us gifts to help us reach our destiny. So we all have a statement which sums up our lives. We may not know what it is until we leave this earth, but there is a destiny statement for each of us. And it's much like the one-liner explanation of the lives of the men and women of faith that are found in Hebrews 11. So I'm not going to take time to read that, but go there and read that sometime and see what they say about men and women like Abraham and Sarah and all those great people of faith. You know, stepping into destiny, though, isn't a one-time event. It comes when we begin to learn how to fully depend on God. Everything that comes into our lives is meant to teach us how to do that. Everything. When we get to the point where we think we can handle it all ourselves, we've just stepped out of our destiny. The Holy Spirit gives us gifts that we can use on this journey. However, we need Him to activate them, and He will. When we submit our plans to Him, when we surrender them to Him, we have to do what Proverbs 3:5-8 in the Message Bible says. And here is what it says. Trust God from the bottom of your heart. Don't try to figure everything out on your own. Listen for God's voice in everything you do, everywhere you go. He's the one who will keep you on track. Don't assume that you know it all. Run to God. Run from evil. Your body will glow with health. Your very bones will vibrate with life. Now, we've been talking about how our anxiety-filled thoughts, fearful emotions, and overwhelmingly impossible desires to fix all the world's problems aren't helping us in the least. As a matter of fact, it's very different from our bodies glowing with health and our bones vibrating with life, right? That's like total opposites, because it's not healthy to live in this state of chronic stress. It's not only related to our overall health, but to our purpose and to the destiny that God has designed for us. So these verses in Proverbs give us a good outline for how to step into our destinies. They will also help us achieve overall health. And that's logical, because if we aren't healthy, we can't fulfill the destiny that God has for us. We have to be here on earth to do that. This is why the evil one works so hard against us. From the day we were born, I believe that he knew what our destinies were. And he can see the signs of greatness in us and throws roadblocks in our paths to deter us. This is why we must listen to God and get His plan, His blueprint for how to live this life. So first and foremost, God tells us in that passage in Proverbs to trust him. And that's because he knows we are powerless without him. Trusting God means I believe he will keep his promises to me all the time, not just every once in a while. He will protect me, he will provide for me, and direct my paths all the time. He knows everything about me and still gives me grace to live each and every day. Trusting God means I'm not stressing over everything in my life. I'm handing those things to him and trusting him to take care of them or show me what he wants me to do about them. I really am, and you really are, his hands and feet in this world. But we are only effective if we are listening to what he is telling us to do and allowing him to lead us. That's living life on purpose instead of by my own petty whims. So trusting him from the bottom of my heart, like this verse says, means there's nothing left to not trust him with, okay? Many of us are prone to kind of try to keep something back that we don't want to hand to God, something just for ourselves. For years, I gave him everything but processed sugar. Sugar was mine. It was the last thing, the thing at the bottom of my heart. And I'm going to put on the coach hat now, okay? So beware. What's at the bottom of your heart? Yeah, so think about that as we're talking. The opposite of trusting God is to be self-reliant, take matters into my own hands and try to figure it all out on my own. It's the I can do it by myself attitude. And for years, that was where I was on my weight loss journey. I knew what God had told me to do, but I hadn't asked him to help me or show me how to do it. Basically, I didn't ask for his help because I didn't want to give up sugar. The thing I was keeping at the bottom of my heart. God, though, reminds me of an extremely patient parent with a rambunctious 2-year-old. He sits back and waits till we give up or fail. And even then, he won't intervene unless we ask. Now, I stayed in the 2-year-old stage for way too many years, so don't do what I did. I didn't want to admit that I couldn't figure out how to lose weight. I just kept trying and failing. I wanted to do it my way, which never works and only served to help me gain more and more weight. The breakthrough came when I admitted to God that he was right all along. And when I admitted that I am weak and that I can't do what he wanted me to do in my own strength, his grace swooped in to save me. He rescued me from an early death. If you remember, a cardiac surgeon had given me 5 years to live back in 1999 if I didn't lose weight and keep it off. And I would be dead today had I kept trying to figure out everything on my own and do it my way. The song, I did it my way, it doesn't work here, okay? 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10 in the Amplified are verses that I really live by today. So here's what it says. He has said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My loving kindness and my mercy are more than enough, always available regardless of the situation. For my power, God's power, is being perfected and is completed and shows itself most effectively in your weakness and my weakness. Therefore, I will all the more gladly boast in my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may completely enfold me and may dwell in me. So I am well pleased with weaknesses, with insults, with distresses, with persecutions, and with difficulties for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak in human strength, which we all are, then I am strong, truly able, truly powerful, truly drawing from God's strength. See, God has all strength. We just have to stop pushing so hard, wanting our way, and let Him take over. When I did that, His grace became like the wind at my back, propelling me forward. I had His grace already. I didn't have to conjure it up. But I didn't understand the magnitude or potential of the strength and power of that grace. The key to activating the power of God's grace in my life and in yours is surrender. I said, I give up, God. I don't know how to do this. Show me. And when I did that, it was like a switch was flipped in heaven and something came alive in me. And I knew, in that moment I knew, whatever was going to come next was going to change my life. And it did, in a magnificent way of losing 250 pounds. But that day, I put my stake in the ground and I said, from this day forward, my intent is to learn how to give up processed sugar for good. That's my goal. That's what I want. And I made it clear and plain that I had failed to make things happen on my own, and I needed God to help me and lead me to those who could show me how to get rid of the white stuff for good. I didn't go from eating every sugary thing in sight to eating only lettuce like the next day, because that's a diet. That's what we do on diets. I needed help understanding how to change my habits for the rest of my life. Now, God led me to a coach and a group that helped me do just that. And they were His hands and feet to show me how to begin to make the journey that would lead me on my destiny path, the path that I believe God had designed for me from the beginning of my birth, even before my birth. So, we are also to listen for God's voice in everything we do and everywhere we go. He's the one who is going to keep us on track. We know we should listen to God, but sometimes it seems a whole lot easier to listen to every other voice that screams so loudly in our ears. If we are listening to Him in everything we do, that means we're going to have better habits. We will have better habits. We are going to eat right. We're going to get proper exercise. We're going to work hard, but also take time to play and enjoy life. We're going to get proper rest, spend quality time with God, and have good relationships with others. We should also listen for His voice everywhere we go. Now, that's a place to pause and think about, where are you going? And what are you doing when you're there? Are you involved in projects and groups and organizations that you don't have, so much so that you don't have time to take care of your own health or family? And what is the motivation for that? Is it only to give you a sense of, I've accomplished something, or I'm somebody? Remember, God has our destinies already planned out. And sometimes they don't involve those things that we think we should be doing. Psalm 139:16 in the New Living Translation tells us, "You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed." So he's the one who will keep us on track because he's the only one who knows what the path is that we should be on. Isaiah 30, 20 through 21, and this is the last part of verse 20, tells us that he will direct us when we veer off of the path that he has chosen for us. So here's what it says. Your teacher will no longer hide himself, but your eyes will see your teacher. Your ears will hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, whenever you turn to the right or to the left. Now, I can't share this scripture without pointing out the obvious but sometimes hidden truth here. We have to be going somewhere for him to direct us. We can't just be standing there or sitting there or laying there doing nothing. It also says that the teacher will no longer be hidden. We know it is Jesus who is speaking to us, and we will hear what he says. We don't have to be worried about getting there, even though we don't even know exactly where there is, right? But our teacher does, and we will hear his directions telling us which way to go. John 10:27 tells us the same thing, and it is Jesus speaking, and he says to his disciples, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. Now, back in 1977, when God first told me to stop eating sugar, I knew it was his voice. I had no doubt about that. And he knew me because he spoke directly to me. I just didn't follow what he told me to do. I listened. I wrote down what he said in my journal, but I did not take his direction then. I took it years later, but I didn't do it then. And that leads me to the next point, which is don't assume that you know it all. And this is really difficult for a lot of people to swallow because most of us want to be right. We'll argue for our positions, but this one statement means we have to give up the idea that we are right and everyone else is wrong. We have to give up the idea that we know it all. This is, of course, an extremely prideful attitude, right? So where does that prideful, I know it all attitude come from? Well, I had that attitude, and I could argue it's genetic. I'm the oldest child, the oldest grandchild. Everyone expected me to be in charge. I was just born bossy. I've always known how to be a take charge person, so things would get done. I'm actually the oldest child of the oldest child of the oldest child. Yeah, I mean, it's like really genetic in me. All of that may or may not be true for you, but one thing for sure is true. We don't know better than God. Now, he may have given you leadership gifts, wisdom, teaching, for me, writing, coaching, compassion, but that's so I will submit those gifts to him and let him lead me to my destiny and purpose. So what's your excuse? Because that's really an excuse for me that it's genetic, right? Because I'm using the gifts in a wrong way. But what gifts has he given you, and what might they be used for? You know, I must submit to God's wisdom and authority. These days, I finally want to submit to him. It's not a thing that I think I have to do. It's what I want to do. And there's a real difference between that. Like, oh, I have to submit to God. I have to surrender this thing that I really love to him. No, I get to do that. I get to do that out of love. It's not like just necessary. It's also very freeing for me. No longer do I have to carry the stress and the worry and the overwhelm and the anxiety and the frustration and the shame and the condemnation and the guilt and rebellion and the necessity to do everything perfectly. I can unload every care and concern on his massive shoulders, hand them to him, and let them go. There is nothing more freeing than realizing you no longer have to be the boss. You can rest in him. You can let him do the driving, which is a really good thing because you don't know where you're headed anyway, right? You don't know your destiny. You don't know where you're going, even though you may be living in the midst of what you know is your destiny calling. You still don't know the next step. It's always a marvelous adventure to walk this out with God. And then the next thing is we run to God. So surrendering to him doesn't mean that everything will be perfect all the time. Jesus told us in John 16:33, here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. Yep, he said it. He said, I, Jesus, have overcome the world. So what he is saying is that when troubles and trials and sorrow overtake us, we have a refuge, a place to go. We run to God. We take solace in him. Psalm 91, 1-4 tells us this. Those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare about the Lord. He alone is my refuge, my place of safety. He is my God, and I trust him, for he will rescue you from every trap and protect you from deadly disease. He will cover you with his feathers. Yeah. He will shelter you with his wings. Oh, do you feel it now? Do you feel him covering you with his feathers, sheltering you with his wings? His faithful promises are your armor and protection. He is our protector, but he's also our guide. And we know that Jeremiah 29:11 tells us God has plans for our good and not our disasters, to give us a future and a hope. We tend to skip over the next verses, which tell us why we should always run to God first. In those days when you pray, I will listen. If you look for me wholeheartedly, you will find me. I will be found by you, says the Lord. I will end your captivity and restore your fortunes. I will gather you out of the nations where I sent you and will bring you home again to your own land. What does running to God look like to you? For me, it really looks like spending intentional, no agenda time with God, just sitting at his feet and waiting for him to reveal himself to me. There are times when I voice my prayers to him, but these days I am really trying to listen more than I talk because he has a lot of wisdom to give me. But I have to be honest here, okay? At times it really sounds more like, help God, the sky is falling. And still I'm learning to run to him and leave those heartaches and pains and troubles at his feet and walk away knowing they are in better hands than me stressing over them, which does really no good. Running from evil is the next thing, and that should go without saying, but many of us run towards evil rather than away from it. We do that when we buy into the evil one's lies, and of course, he feeds those to us because he doesn't want the next verse to happen. After we've done all the things in Proverbs 3, 5-7, we have another one of God's promises. And this is the one I love. Your body will glow with health. Your very bones will vibrate with life. Every time I read those verses, I feel the power of the Holy Spirit on them, because this is his primary goal for each of us. And he's just explained in Proverbs 3:5-7, how it can happen. If we want our bodies to glow with health and our bones to vibrate with life, we can't try to figure everything out on our own and assume we know it all. We have to be teachable. We need to spend time with God and stop giving in to the evil one. God could care less about how we look, friends. That's our deal, okay? But he does want us to be healthy in order to fulfill the destiny he has for each of us. He has this greater than you can think, imagine, or dream goal for each of us. His destiny for you is something you won't know until you get there. But when you do, it'll blow your socks off. And then it only continues and compounds, because as you step into destiny, more of his plans come into your view, and you're ready to go forward with them. You can only reach that destiny, though, by surrendering to God and totally trusting him. Ephesians 2:10, Passion Translation, another of my favorite verses. It says, we are God's poetry, a recreated people who will fulfill the destiny he has given each of us. For we are joined to Jesus, the Anointed One. Even before we were born, he planned in advance our destiny and the good works we would do to fulfill it. Stepping into our destiny means we are living totally sold out to Jesus. It means we are listening to God and watching for how he is moving and where he is directing us. His goal for us was planned before we were born. He will get us there, even though we may feel like we've already blown it. But God has this way of redirecting us when we feel like we've messed everything up. Romans 8:28 in the Passion Translation says, so we are convinced that every detail of our lives is continually woven together for good, for we are his lovers who have been called to fulfill his designed purpose. So the one prerequisite for God weaving together every detail of our lives, both the good and the bad, for our good and his glory, is that we need to be in absolute, total, sold out love with him. Then, no matter what happens, he will make sure we fulfill the destiny he has planned for us before we were born. So tell me, what is there to stress about, especially when we have that bones vibrating thing to look forward to? I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. For those of you who do need help to begin or to continue your journey towards a total health transformation, especially getting rid of the stress so you can fulfill the destiny God has for you, we are accepting new members for Overcomers Christian Weight Loss Academy now. So simply go to teresashieldsparker.com/overcomers and you can join with us. So like I said, this is the last lesson in our Eating Stress course, which includes the video content of each of the podcast episodes, transcript download, and the action steps, which are included on the transcript. So get access by going to teresashieldsparker.com/stress. All of those links will be in the show notes. So thank you so much for listening to the podcast and sharing it with your family and friends. Please share this episode, share the eating stress course as well. We'll start on something else next week. Should I tell you? No, I'll let it be a surprise. Until next week, sweet grace for your journey.